Cash for climate change. Poor countries want payback for pollution laden coals. At UN climate talks in Warsaw, the contentious issue of climate change compensation divides nations. In Burkina Faso, extreme droughts are killing off livestock and devastating crops. In Micronesia, rising water levels have spurred residents to dismantle ancient ruins for the construction of seawalls. And in the western region of Kenya, the aftermath of severe 2011 flooding continues to threaten the livelihoods of thousands. The impact of climate change on poor and developing countries has, many experts agree, already been profound. Unlike wealthier nations, these countries are largely unable to quickly recover from disastrous weather events or adequately prepare for the consequences of a rapidly changing climate. Now, around 130 of these nations are demanding the so-called guilty parties, industrialized nations whose development has historically yielded the majority of greenhouse gas emissions, atone for their environmental sins. The appeal for what's referred to as climate change compensation has been ongoing since around 1992, when representatives from the Alliance of Small Island States, an organization of 43 members dedicated to mitigating the impact of global warming on low-lying and small island nations, articulated such a proposal at a Rio Earth Summit. They spoke up and said, "Hey, we've got a big global problem. We are not contributing much to it, but it could threaten our very existence," says Coco Werner, an academic officer at the United Nations University who specializes in adaptation to changing climate. Since then, these communities have been asking for what amounts to some sort of international insurance mechanism. Despite those pleas, ongoing international discussions have yielded few results since that first request. But the concept of compensation is once again garnering attention at UN climate talks currently underway in Nassau, Poland, as delegates make good on the 2012 agreement to come up with some measure of addressing losses and damages incurred by climate change. The discussions are particularly heated in light of Typhoon Haiyan, which is estimated to have killed at least 4,000 people in the Philippines earlier this month. It's unfeasible to link a specific weather event like Haiyan to climate change, but that hasn't stopped some delegates from making the connection anyway. Loss and damage is an issue that my delegation holds very dearly because of very obvious reasons, say Nadaref Sano, lead negotiator for the Philippines, at the sessions, in an interview with Reuters. Climate change is already resulting in massive losses and damages, and we must come up with an outcome that addresses loss and damage. It's not entirely clear what the outcome would look like. Low financial reparations are one key element. Countries making the request are careful to distinguish any such reparations from existing relief aid. The money would also be separate from the 100 billion in annual funds the industrialized nations have promised in an effort to help poor countries bolster their infrastructure. Some delegates have proposed a pool of money to be distributed as deemed appropriate, and others have suggested that each country's historical greenhouse gas emissions be quantified. The data could play a role in determining the extent to which a country be held accountable going forward. The financial burdens of such proposals threaten to be enormous, Werner says, and largely explain why countries like the US, Australia, and members of the European Union are reluctant to make a commitment. For those concerned about having to make good, the situation makes them gravely nervous from an economic standpoint, she explains. So they want to study more, they want to discuss more, they want to buy more time. Indeed, representatives from wealthier nations this week suggest that any plan for addressing losses and damages should be delayed until at least 2015. And according to U.S. representatives, financial compensation won't be part of the deal. Todd Stern, the U.S. Special Envoy on climate change, has already said that the country can and won't offer up more money. The fiscal reality of the United States and other developed countries is not going to allow it, he said earlier this year. Stern also noted that it is unwarranted to assign blame for emissions before the point at which people realize these emissions caused harm to the climate system. For her part, Werner hopes to see any agreement encompass more than just checkbooks and focus on international cooperation instead. Though countries remain at an impasse regarding financial reparation, a global agreement on losses and damages might also include collaborative research to anticipate looming risk, secure residency for those whose own countries become uninhabitable, or formal apologies from the countries that carry heavy historical responsibility. We face a scale of challenges we may never have faced before as a human race, and we need to look beyond nation-state to confront it, Werner says, because fundamentally this isn't about money. This is about human welfare. Next, 2 free on bail in 30-year slavery case. London police have released 2 suspects on bail after they were arrested in connection with the case of 3 traumatized women who allegedly spent 30 years as slaves, Scotland Yard said Friday. A 69-year-old Malaysian woman, a 57-year-old Irish woman, and a 30-year-old Briton who had apparently spent her entire life in servitude were rescued last month after calling a charity, police said. Police arrested a man and a woman, both aged 67 and described as non-British nationals, at a house in South London on Thursday, but the unnamed pair were later freed after questioning. 2 people arrested on Thursday, 21st November, in connection with an investigation into slavery and domestic servitude, having bail until a day in January pending further inquiries, a policeman's statement said. Police had earlier described it as one of the worst cases of its kind they have seen. We had never seen anything of this magnitude before, said Detective Inspector Kevin Hillen, who leads Scotland Yard Human Trafficking Unit. These women are highly traumatized, having been held in servitude for at least 30 years with no real exposure to the outside world, and trying to find out exactly what has happened over 3 decades will understandably take some time, he told reporters. Police said there was no evidence to suggest that the case involved sexual abuse. Detective Saylor did not know where the youngest woman was born, adding that the relationship between the three women was part of an ongoing investigation and we are not willing to speculate. However, we believe that the 30-year-old woman had been in servitude all her life. A Scotland Yard statement said, "The women, who are now in an unspecified location, were rescued after the Irish woman found the courage to call the Freedom Charity on October 18th after it was featured in a television program about domestic slavery," police said. The charity usually deals with forced marriage and honor-based abuse, but it also working with women who feel trapped in difficult situations. Scourge of modern-day slavery. The Irish woman said she and two others had been held against their will in House London for 30 years. The charity raised the alarm with police and with the help of secret telephone calls. The 30-year-old British woman and the Irish woman agreed to meet with charity workers and police on October 25th. Police identified the address where they had been held, in the South London borough of Lambeth, and went there to rescue the Malaysian woman. The two arrests were made almost a month later, as soon as officers had established the fact and were satisfied the victims were aware of police intentions. The police statement said, "The three women had control freedom." The Hidden said it was not clear what that meant in practice. Their life was greatly controlled, and for much of it they would have been kept in the premises. Anita Prem, the founder of the Freedom Charity, said the women's treatment was barbaric, adding that she believed they suffered physical but not sexual abuse. "You are basically looking at domestic slavery, and you wouldn't expect that would be happening in the UK in London in 2013, she told Sky News. A spokesman for Britain's Interior Minister, Theresa May, said she was shocked by this appalling case. He said May would wait for the outcome of the police investigation, but she's made clear her determination to tackle the scourge of modern slavery. Britain had the lowest prevalence of modern-day slavery of 160 countries in an index published last month by the Walk Free Foundation. The index estimates that between 4,200 and 4,600 people were held in practices such as debt bondage, forced marriage, human trafficking, and forced labor. Earlier this year, 3 women were freed after more than a decade being sexually abused in a house in Cleveland, in the U.S. state of Ohio. Their captor, Ariel Castro, was sentenced to life in prison in August but was found dead in his cell the following month. Solemn event to mark JFK's assassination. Loose gatherings of the curious and conspiracy-minded at Dallas Dealey Plaza have marked past anniversaries of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, featuring everything from makeshift memorials to marching drummers to discussions about who else might have been in on the killing. But in the place where the president's motorcade passed through and shot ran out on November 22, 1963, a solemn ceremony on the 50th anniversary of his death, designed to avoid such destruction, will include brief remarks by the mayor and the tolling of church bells. It's an approach that will be mirrored Friday in Boston, where the JFK Library and Museum will open a small exhibit of never-before displayed items from Kennedy's state funeral and host a musical tribute that will be closed to the public. And in Washington, where President Barack Obama will meet privately at the White House with leaders and volunteers from the Kennedy-established Peace Corps program. It's 50 years later, and it's also a moment to look forward to the future, said Thomas Putnam, executive director of the library, which usually doesn't observe the anniversary. We want our tone to be respectful, and we want it to have a certain reverence. But we also want it to be hopeful and end on this notion of what JFK stood for. The committee, convened by current Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings to plan the city's event, wanted to focus in a positive way more on the legacy of President Kennedy, said Ron Kirk, a former mayor and member of the panel. About 5,000 tickets were issued for the free ceremony in Dealey Plaza, which is flanked by the Texas School Book Depository building, where Sniper Lee Harvey Oswald perched on the 6th floor in 1963. Friday's event will include readings from the president's speeches by author David McCullough in a nod to Kennedy's military service. The U.S. Naval Academy Men's Glee Club will perform, and there will be an Air Force flyover. A moment of silence will be held at 12:30 p.m. when the president was shot. There was no shortage of events in Dallas this year marking the anniversary, including panels with journalists and others who witnessed the event of the day, special concerts and museum exhibits. As press aide for Texas government John Connolly, Julian Reed was in the media, but several vehicles behind the presidential limousine. After the gunshot, he watched as the vehicle carrying the president and wounded governor sped away. Reed released a book this year recounting his experience and has attended several of the events, which he called cathartic. Even though there are all those melancholy thoughts, the way it's shaping up gives me more of a comfort than any time since 1963, said Reed, who will return to Dealey Plaza on Friday. John Judge, executive director of the Coalition on Political Assassinations, first came to Dealey Plaza to mark the 50th anniversary of JFK's death in 1968. Judge's group, which believes Kennedy's death was part of a conspiracy, usually gathers on the plaza's grassy knoll for a moment of silence at 12:30 p.m. Since it'll be blocked off this year, Judge says he's reached a livable agreement with the city in which they'll gather a few blocks away and move to the plaza after the official ceremony ends. The group has made t-shirts for the occasion with the slogan, 50 years in denial is enough, and an image like that of Kennedy on a half-dollar coin, except with a bullet hole in his head and blood. It was meant to be shocking because we think that not solving his murder was shocking, Judge said. He added about 10 members of this group will attend the official ceremony. Other Events being held Friday in Dallas include a ceremony at Parkland Memorial Hospital, where Kennedy was declared dead, to lower the U.S. flag to health staff. In Fort Worth, the city's Chamber of Commerce will host a breakfast at a hotel where Kennedy gave his last speech and spent the last night of his life. In Boston, the private musical tribute will feature Paul Winter, who performed at the White House with his jazz sextet during Kennedy's presidency, along with the U.S. Navy Corps and James Taylor. Other notable guests at the event, which will be streamed on the library's website, include Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, who is scheduled to read quotes from Kennedy's speeches. Will people who fill out Obamacare applications actually enroll? October's dismal Obamacare enrollment numbers were tempered by a bright spot for the White House. 1 million Americans who took the trouble to fill out an application on the TechPlex site but have not yet picked a plan. A paltry far under target 106,000 people nationwide actually selected a private insurance plan by putting it into their online shopping cart last month. But the Obama administration stressed that 975,000 other Americans who fill out applications online would soon join their ranks. The White House needs 7 million enrolled by the end of March. There is no question that if the website were working as it's supposed to, the number would be much higher of people who have actually enrolled, Obama said at a press conference last week. The president argued that the number of people who fill out fairly lengthy applications shows there is a real demand for quality, affordable health insurance. But it's far from clear that the hundreds of thousands of people who went through the steps to apply for coverage will actually ever complete the process. While the website problems undoubtedly deter some people from enrolling, most of the glitches were concentrated at the application, not enrollment stage. That leaves open the possibility that consumers are balking at the price they are being quoted when they finish their application, not glitches. One such person is Jessica Sanford, a Washington state single mom whom Obama cited in a speech as an example of someone who would benefit from the exchange. Sanford was later notified by the state that it had miscalculated her tax credit for purchasing insurance, which made the insurance plan too expensive for her to buy. "I'm so incredibly disappointed and saddened," she wrote on the exchanger's Facebook page. "You cannot underestimate the rate shock," said Bob Moffett, a healthcare expert with the conservative Heritage Foundation think tank. But many healthcare experts think that delay is more about people taking their time before making a big decision, not about price. People who went through the trouble to fill out the application online, despite a hour-long wait due to glitches, will eventually select a plan, they predict. The White House admitted that only 3 out of 10 people who tried to access the website in its first weeks were able to get through. They want to get 7 million people signed up. If they got $1 million in the first month, even with all these delays, they are pretty much on track, said Karen Pollitt, a healthcare expert with the nonprofit Kaiser Family Foundation. I think if people went through all the troubles to figure out eligibility, they must be serious. Nobody has that much time to waste. The most common reason people visit an exchange website but did not enroll in the plan was that they were not certain they would afford it. According to an October survey of uninsured adults by the nonprofit Commonwealth Fund, the second and third most common responses were that they were still trying to decide which plan they wanted, and that they saw the deductibles and co-payments were too high. Of the respondents, 37% said technical difficulties were the reason they didn't choose a plan. Even so, Sarah Collins, a vice president at the Commonwealth Fund, said a high number of people who went through the application process is an encouraging sign for the Obama administration. That's a really important number, Collins said. It shows people's determination to at least begin the enrollment process. The White House has argued that people tend to put off making a big purchase like healthcare until the last minute because they want time to weigh their options. John Kingsdale, who ran Massachusetts Health Reform Marketplace, told reporters last week that insurance is a tough sell. When Massachusetts instituted its health care reform in 2006, state officials found that only 1 out of every 18 people who browsed the insurance exchange website actually enrolled in a plan. It's a grudge buy, and so there's going to be a lot of browsing, he said. But clearly people are procrastinating more in some states than in others. 14 states are running their own exchanges. The rest rely on the Polk healthcare government site. Interestingly, 21% of people on these state exchanges who were determined eligible to enroll in the marketplace plan did so in October. But only 4% of those who were found eligible in the federal marketplace selected a plan. It's unclear if more of the state customers were moved to take the next step and enroll because their website experience was smoother or because the premiums they were offered were cheaper. Many of the states that operate their own exchanges have more insurance companies offering more plans, which helps to drive prices down. The White House will find out soon if its theory that glitches and procrastination are slowing enrollment is correct. It predicts a surge of enrollees before the December 15th deadline to buy coverage that begins January 1st. Next, 5 kids survived submersion in icy pond for up to 45 minutes. 5 small children survived in near freezing water for as long as 45 minutes after the car in which they were riding plunged off a highway into a holding pond near Minneapolis early this morning. All 5 children were unresponsive at the time of the rescue, but are alive. They were taken to hospitals, but their current condition is not yet known. Bystanders who saw the 4-door sedan carring off the highway tried to help, swimming into the icy pond as the car slipped below the surface. Police and rescue swimmers were able to free the children, aged 1 to 7, only after the vehicle was towed out of the water, leaving some of the youngsters in the frigid water for up to 45 minutes. They spent significant time in water, said State Patrol spokesman Eric Roisk. The water is about 9 feet deep. It's incredibly cold. Not freezing, but close. The cold water may have helped keep the children alive. Authorities said all the children are related to one another and are biological children or stepchildren of Marion Gurido, 23, who was driving the car. Gurido was able to escape the car on her own before it sank. Police said no alcohol was detected on Gurido. The children have been identified as Eliana Rani, 1, Zenavia Rani, 5, Emily Coleman Garrido, 5, Zarihana Rani, 6, and Hilarious Coleman Garrido, 7.